264 back in session.
All right, Ms. Burgess, you may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. First, I'd like to make a bulk offer of exhibits that have been agreed to. They're all spreadsheets that were produced to us. Those are F310 through F402. 356 was already admitted.
And Judge, we do have an objection to it. It's based on relevance. These are just
Wait, I'm sorry, an objection to which one?
to not the one that's already been admitted, but to the bulk of these spreadsheets as being irrelevant.
All right, I'll have to go look at 310 to 402 on box.
And that, we don't need a ruling on that. We're not going to ask questions about them. So it's for the record. 356 was an exemplar, but it shows the bulk, how much mass of data. So that's why, we don't need a ruling on that.
I'll just have to look at it. I may have questions for Mr. Saylor about them if they're his documents. I don't know. I'll have to go look at them, but we can take that up later. Let's get back to the testimony so we can try to finish him up today if that's possible.
Sure. So Mr. Saylor, we're just looking, I have a few more exhibits for you. 250, 251, and 275. And I believe these are agreed, right? I move for
And no objection to those three, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, 250.
250, correct, Mrs. Burgess?
Yes.
250, what were the other two?
251 and 275.
275. And Ms. Klingseisen, any objection to those three?
No objection.
Are these,
Plaintiffs, excuse me, plaintiffs exhibits 250, 251, and 275 were admitted. Mr. Saylor, do you have a question?
yes, I was just curious if I have to look them up or if they're going to be displayed.
You do not need to look them up at the moment unless someone asks you to.
We can just look at them on the screen quickly. Mr. Weisfraud, 250, please. Mr. Saylor, this is an example of an article that you wrote on Rockfin about the Nittany Lions event, correct?
Yes?
And then 275. And this is a tweet linking to that article and also linking, which links you through rockfin.com, correct?
It's a link.
And that link, in order to get to the premium content that is $250, you'd have to pay $9.99 to Rockfin, correct?
Yes.
And let's look at 251. This is afterwards a recap of the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club. Also premium content you have to pay for through Rockfin, correct?
I think so.
Okay. Mr. Saylor, Flow Sports never objected to you going to work for the University of North Carolina, did they?
Kinda, they did.
They say they were going to enforce a non-compete with you at the University of North Carolina?
No.
In fact, they said that if it worked out, they'd like for you to continue to post content on Flow Sports, right?
Yes. But they did, however, call the head coaches and complain to them.
So who called who?
Christian Piles called Coleman Scott and Tony Ramos.
Okay, well, we will hear from Mr. Piles later, but it's true that Flow Sports never indicated to you that they were going to enforce their non-compete against you going to UNC, right?
No, they didn't, but your first question was, did they complain?
And we can all agree that UNC wrestling is in the wrestling industry, correct?
The non-compete language says sports video industry. So,
I'm sorry, I'm asking about the wrestling industry. It's clear to you that going to work for UNC, you're going to be doing wrestling work. You're going to be doing recruitment and wrestling, correct?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, and the sports industry includes universities, right?
The what industry?
the sports industry. We talked about industry-wide preclusions earlier. The sports industry includes UNC, right?
No, we talked about sports video industry.
I'm sorry, we talked, your lawyer asked you some questions. I'm really just asking you to answer this question. UNC is in the sports industry, correct?
Sure.
Okay, I pass the witness. Subject to damages and the entry of those exhibits.
Ms. President?
Hi, Mr. Saylor.
Well,
When was the first time that you substantively learned about Rockfin?
substantively, I don't know. Maybe March-ish of 19.
Okay, and can you describe what you're remembering in March?
I became aware of the platform. I became aware of really rudimentary aspects of it, as in they paid in a cryptocurrency. It was a one price point type model, in that you pay $9.99 and you get access to everyone. You know, I don't know if that's substantial information, but that's when I first started learning about it.
And who did you learn about that from?
I learned a little bit from Ben Askren. I learned a little bit about it from Martin Floriani. Yeah, I think that's
Okay, do you remember having a meeting or with Martin Floriani in late February of 2019?
late February meeting. I don't recall. I may have.
Okay, Hank, could you please pull up F002? It's already been admitted. I'm just going to show you this to refresh your recollection, Mr. Saylor.
Okay.
And Hank, if you could blow out the bottom starting where it says on Sunday, February 17th.
Oh, yes.
What demo were you referring to, Mr. Saylor?
I don't believe when you said meeting, I don't believe that meeting was in person. I think we were just online goofing around on like a, Skype or something. And he was showing me, I don't know how the site worked or something.
Okay, Hank, would you please pull up Defendants 152? Mr. Saylor, and flip through a few pages. Mr. Saylor, do you recognize this document to be the demo you saw?
I don't recall the demo. I mean, this looks familiar. Perhaps this is what it was.
Okay, Hank, you can put that down. Well, when you were going over the demo, Mr. Saylor, do you remember the purpose of that meeting generally?
Yes, I believe that he was looking for me to poke and say, well, what's good.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. He was looking for me to what?
Cut out for me too.
Me too.
I believe he was saying, I believe the whole purpose of it was, what do you think?
Okay, was there any other purpose?
I don't recall.
Okay, Hank, could you please look back F002 and pop out the same bottom half of the page? Or I'm sorry, go to the second page. And pop out the section on headhunting, please. I'll ask you, Mr. Saylor, to read this for a second, and I'll ask you some questions about it.
Yes, I'm familiar with this.
Okay, so in your mind, whose idea was it that you might work for Rockfin?
I'm going to object that this calls for speculation. I wasn't allowed to ask people's thoughts on the document.
Sustained?
Mr. Saylor, was it your idea to go work for Rockfin?
I had, after viewing the demo, one thing that occurred to me that they would probably need, or that would be a good asset for somebody.
Sir, Mr. Saylor, the question was it your idea? That's a yes or a no. Was it your idea?
Yes. I had an idea that that could be an interesting proposition.
Okay, and when Martin was showing you the demo, did he ask you to come work for him?
No.
Hank, would you please pull up F665? That's already been admitted. Mr. Saylor, do you remember seeing this? I think it was on Friday during someone else's testimony.
Willie's active minutes on Periscope by month. Yes, I remember.
Okay, and an earlier witness was asked, it was insinuated that the spike in February 2019 was in relation to your conversation with Mr. Floriani. So my question for you is, did you access Periscope in February 2019?
I'm sure I did.
Do you remember for what purpose?
Yeah, for the last, I'm gonna ballpark 18 months of my employment at Flow. I had a base salary and then worked on a commission. We received a bonus depending upon how many subscribers I got in a particular quarter. And so I think, as Mr. Machuca testified, an overwhelming majority of my time spent in Periscope was on the attribution dashboard. And that is because after I was done in a management position at Flow, I didn't have any need to look at any other data. The only thing I needed to look at is how many subs I got so that I could calculate where I was tracking on my bonus structure.
Okay, and did you share any information you learned on Periscope with Mr. Floriani?
No,
With anyone at Rockfin?
with no human being other than Christian Piles.
Okay, thanks, Hank. And could you now please pull up F163 and go to page 4? This has already been admitted. And thanks. If you look at the last text message here, Mr. Saylor, on April 10th, just read that.
Yes, that's Martin telling me he does not think I should come be a content creator, or I shouldn't go to Rockfin.
Okay, he says, we can chat more at lunch. Do you remember the lunch?
I don't.
Okay, so do you remember why he didn't think you should commit to join Rockfin right now?
I don't.
Okay, Hank, could you go to page 9, please? And zoom in on that text message under the redaction. Yeah. You could just read the text you sent on 9/23.
On 9/23, I said that I hated my job.
And why'd you say this?
Because I hated my job.
And why did you hate your job?
Because their objectives had changed from passion to monetary.
Okay, Hank, could you go to the top of page 10? Mr. Saylor, you'll see Martin's response is to call him in 5 days. Did you do that?
I don't believe so. I think I think what's happening here is he says, if you feel that way later, give me a shout. And then I took the job at North Carolina. I obviously didn't call Martin. This is a text 3 weeks later. I obviously didn't call Martin 5 days later. I took the job at UNC. He must have heard about it somehow and congratulated me.
Okay, and then do you see the text at the bottom of this pop out from 10:23?
Yes, ma'am.
Martin says you backed out. He wants to put out an interesting idea. Did he put out an interesting idea?
I don't recall.
Okay.
I mean, he may have. I don't know.
You don't remember what that's in reference to?
No.
Okay. How would you generally describe the interactions between you and Martin between the email in February and this time period right here when you backed out of UNC?
The general interactions, I don't know, like a really bad relationship, you know? It was like at some point.
With Martin Floriani?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm talking like, you know, a long-term, I don't know. At some points I'd get really frustrated with work and the atmosphere and environment and things that were going on and just what I could do and what I couldn't do. And sometimes in my head, I would say, I got to figure something out because I can't continue doing this. And on occasion, I would say, I wonder, you know, maybe I could, maybe I could do something with sports betting. Maybe I could do something, maybe I could do something on Rockfin. Maybe I could do something here or there, or whatever. And I think other times I was like, I don't know about that Rockfin thing. Sounds convoluted. I can't put my eggs in that basket. And I think that Martin generally was like, you know what, Willie would be good on here. And I think other times he was like, I don't know, maybe he's not the right fit. And so it was sort of on again, off again.
Okay, Hank, if you could pop that back in. And blow up the next section. Thanks. Willie, what did you mean when you said, I'll get Rockfin, the NHSCA contract, and several other big ones?
It was, I sort of didn't, even this late in the game, you know, October 25th, I didn't have a really good grasp on what Rockfin did or what their expectations were or what was feasible and what was not feasible. I mean, I'll get NHSCA. It's like, first of all, it can't happen because I knew the terms of the contract with Flo, number one. And number two.
I'm sorry, I'm going to object to non-responsive. This is a real narrative far from the
Question was just whether or not, what did you mean by the comment that you made there? What did that mean when you wrote it?
What I meant was that NHSCA, I think, has a good model. I thought that Rockfin would be a good model for NHSCA. That's what I meant.
Do you know that to be true today?
Do I know that? Do I think that to be true today?
Understanding what you know about Rockfin today, is that still something you would get excited about?
No, I don't think it's feasible. I mean, I know it's not feasible.
Thanks. Okay. Thanks, Hank. With that, we're done. I'm done with that exhibit for now. Willie, when did you know you were going to become a content creator on Rockfin, for sure?
when I woke up and was locked out of all my flow stuff.
Not when you quit?
No, because when I quit, I didn't realize I quit. And by that, I mean, I quit at like 8 o'clock at night. And the next morning, I was locked out of everything on flow. And then I talked to Piles, and he said that, yeah, that's standard operating procedure. And so it was only then that I was like, okay, this is not going to be a put in my 30 days type of situation. I am currently unemployed.
Okay, so when Martin came to talk to you in person on November 1st, you didn't commit to going and joining Rockfin as a content creator or employee or otherwise?
Objection leading.
Dan?
No, I
He's
didn't.
going to ask you another question.
How did you leave the conversation with Martin on November 1st when he visited you?
When he visited me, we talked about some things. He was in town for a couple hours. And I remember that I was like, yeah, let's do it. This could be really cool. I think this could be really awesome. But I wasn't committed to it.
Okay.
That timeline that ended up happening.
Okay. How did you end up at Flow Sports?
I was doing work for a site called the Open Mat, which pretty much me and another guy pretty much made from scratch, and sort of took great pride in it. And, you know, around the country going to tournaments and such, and I would see.
You're on mute, Mr. Saylor, you muted yourself.
Yeah. So I was traveling around the country doing coverage, you know, writing about events and previewing events and doing interviews and such. And I would see the Flow guys at that time. There was only two of them. It was only Mark Bader and Joe Williamson. And we got chummy, you know. Sometimes they were really strapped, like didn't have a lot of resources.
This is really, again, a long narrative unrelated to the question. I object to non-responsive.
I'm sorry, I'm rambling.
Question, just so you're clear, the question she's asking you about how you got to Flow Sports, I believe, was the question. So I think let's confirm with Ms. Klingsize what she's asking you now.
That was my question. I'll rephrase that. Did someone recruit you to Flow Sports?
I would say all the guys did. Martin did. Martin.
You cut out. Can you say that one more time?
I think that Joe Williamson put in a recommendation for me to Martin, and then Martin started calling me and then gave me a job offer.
Okay, and can you compare that experience with the February through November timeframe of 2019? Was it same, similar, different?
I'm
Well,
sorry, I need to object to the vague.
I think she's asking you about the working environment at Flow during that time after you went to work there. Is that what you're asking him?
No, Your Honor, I'm asking him to compare his experience with Martin recruiting him to Flow Sports with the February through November timeframe in 2019.
Okay, that's a clearer question. Thank you.
I would say that in 2012 it was incessant. You know, Martin really worked. Martin really worked to get me, and it seemed like that it was a need. Like they were expanding. They needed bodies. They needed help. They needed work. And I would say that in 2019 or whatever it was, there wasn't that pressure. It was just, you know, hey, it's here if it's something you would consider.
Okay. Now, I believe that this has a confidentiality designation. This has already been admitted, but Mr. Saylor, do you have access to F560? Yeah?
I'm sorry, 1 second. F560, yes, I do.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, it's F877.
F877.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Is this an agreement you ever signed?
I don't know.
But this agreement wasn't signed, 877, correct?
I honestly don't remember.
Do you see your signature on this document?
No, ma'am.
Okay. If you hadn't been cut off from your access at Flow Sports, do you think you would have stayed there on November 3rd?
Possibly. I mean, frankly, you know, I took the UNC job 2 weeks before. So we're constantly at each other's necks, and
I'm sorry, you cut out just a little bit there for me,
Yeah,
Mr.
you
Saylor.
cut- You cut out for me as well. If you could repeat your answer, please.
You said you took the UNC job 2 weeks before that, and then it cut out after that.
yes, I took the job at UNC a couple weeks before that. I reconsidered. Me and Piles were a ticking time bomb that was not going to have any sort of longevity. And I had told those guys that on like a few different occasions that I quit. You know, I'm like done. I'm done. So
you don't think that you would have stayed there long term?
Objection meeting.
Sure, sustained.
How could you be sure that there was not longevity?
I don't know. I mean, on one hand, I stayed at Flow years past my satisfaction. On the other hand, so it seemed inevitable that I would eventually leave because of dissatisfaction. On the other hand, I stayed there for years, so who knows? I may have stayed even longer. I don't know. What I do know is that I didn't expect it to be so abrupt.
Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit to your Mat Scouts channel.
Yes.
Can you describe the process of posting, or briefly, please describe the process of putting content on Mat Scouts?
The process? I write something and hit publish.
And does anyone have to approve what you are publishing?
No,
Rockfin doesn't approve it?
no,
Does anyone influence the content you put on Mat Scouts?
no.
Okay. Have you ever been asked to take something off your Mount Scouts channel? This lawsuit aside.
No. Once. Not by Rockfin.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Saylor, you testified earlier today that one of your responsibilities at Flow Sports that was different from Rockfin was organizing events. Do you remember that?
Can you repeat the question?
Was one of your responsibilities at Flow Sports to organize events?
Yes.
Okay. And in connection with those events, did you have any role in production?
With the events, yes.
And what was that?
I would be involved in the run a show. I would, run a show, I mean, this is going to happen at this time, and we're going to do this then, and this is going to be on the stream at this time, and this is who's going to be the announcer, and these are the pyrotechnics, or these are the camera shots that we have, and things like that. What's going to be Jumbotron, and what the graphics are hanging in the facility.
And what, I'm sorry, what did you call that category of
I call that run a show.
run of show? Okay. Anything else?
I would often, for our owned and operated events, either act as the MC for the event, or the on-air talent, or sideline reporter type guy.
Okay. And for the run the show, do you do that for Mount Scouts?
Run of show.
Sorry, run of show.
No, I've never had an event.
Okay. And what about the MC or sideline announcing? Do you do that for Mount Scouts?
I'm not allowed to. No, I've never done that since.
And did you do those two things in 2014 at Flow Sports?
Did I announce matches? I didn't MC anything. 2014. Oh yeah, 2014. Yes. Who's Number One started in 2013, I believe. So yes.
And what about the run of show?
Run of show I was involved in for Who's Number One, and actually, yeah, I kind of overhauled Flow Nationals, which is another owned and operated event. I overhauled Flow Nationals, and we sort of invented the first year Who's Number One. So yes, that did take place. Both of those took place before 2014.
Okay. You testified, I believe it was yesterday, that you didn't know of any other content creator on Rockfin who received a bonus. I'd just like to ask a clarification on that. Do you know what Rockfin does in terms of paying content creators?
No.
Okay. You testified just very recently that you had heard that Kale was shopping around his event and you weren't sure from whom you learned that. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember when you heard that, whether it was before or after the text message from Kale?
It was definitely after.
Okay.
Because I did. You want me to fit?
Yeah.
It was definitely after because when Kale texted me, that was the first time I had any inclination that he had any interest in doing an event. That's the first I heard of it. And so any information that he was shopping it had to have come afterwards.
And when you talked to him on the phone after that text, did you try to convince him one way or another on what to do with his event?
No, you know, I saw that text and I thought two things.
I'm going to object to non-responsive.
Okay.
Your Honor, I think he was answering the question.
The answer to the question is no.
Okay. I just need one more second to think.
Your Honor, would it be possible to instruct the witness to not clap whatever he's clapping? Thank you.
Apologies.
Got that message. Thank you.
Mr. Saylor, do you remember the email? I believe the subject line was easy live targets that we went over, Ms. Burgess went over earlier today with you.
Yes.
Did you ever target any of those entities on that list
No.
in any way? Okay. And what about the here's a big one email? Do you remember that one?
With a creator? I remember that one, yes.
Did you reach out to that person?
Billy, no. I never.
Okay. Okay. And when you were a W-2 employee of Rockfin, do you remember how long that lasted, that status?
It was very quick. I don't know, 30 days, 45 days, 15 days. I don't know. It was quick.
Okay. And what were your job duties during that time?
For whom?
For Rockfin.
There were none.
You didn't do anything on behalf of Rockfin?
No.
What about now? Are you a contractor for Rockfin?
No.
Do you do anything on behalf of Rockfin today?
No.
Have you ever recruited media rights on
No.
behalf of Rockfin?
Nor myself.
Okay. And do you understand how you get compensated as a content creator?
Nope. It would be. It's kind of a sad fact, isn't it, that I do not really understand how I get paid. But that's the truth of it. It's over my head.
I pass the witness.
Mr. Saylor, how did you get involved and interested in the world of amateur wrestling?
I started wrestling 5 years old, I believe.
Was there a time that you, well, let's back up a little bit since I haven't had a chance to put you on direct. I know that your honors heard from Mr. Saylor before, and I'll skip a lot, but what education did you have after high school?
I got an undergraduate degree.
In
Finished
what?
bachelor's of in actually creative writing.
And did you get a master's degree as well?
I did master's of fine arts at Wyoming.
And after that, how did you transition from that master's degree to becoming a writer on, like you mentioned to Ms. Klingheisen, with the open map?
Well, I mean, it's a long story, but
Can you tell us the short version?
all right, the short version is I thought I wanted to be in academia forever. And then I was like, got done with my master's degree and I was like, I need a break from a university. And so I started doing I moved home. I just got a regular job, mind numbing job, which was perfect for me at the time. And I started diving back into wrestling. Meanwhile, another guy started these wrestling forums, and I said to him, hey, what if I posted articles and rankings? What if I produced articles and rankings? Would you post them? He said, sure. And then it gained some traction, and it turned into a full-time, still to this day, it's one of the best media outlets in the country.
Did you develop an inventory of wrestling news, previews, recaps, things of that nature at that time?
Yes, sir.
Objection leading.
In 2012, did you receive any type of recognitions for your work in wrestling before you went to Flow Sports?
In 2012, I won National Wrestling Writer of the Year.
Can you repeat your answer, Mr. Saylor? I'm sorry. In 2012, you won?
National Wrestling Writer of the Year.
Thank you.
Prior to becoming a Flow Sports employee, were you doing rankings?
Yes.
Prior to becoming a Flow Sports employee, were you writing about wrestling?
Yes.
Prior to becoming a Flow Sports employee, were you doing spreadsheets in connection with that?
Yes.
When you joined Flow Sports, first of all, when was that? Prior to becoming a Flow Sports employee, were you doing spreadsheets in connection with that?
Yes.
When you joined Flow Sports, first of all, when was that?
Martin called me as I was driving to the Olympic trials in 2012. I think June of 2012.
At that time, did you sign any kind of non-compete or PIIA or anything like that?
No.
Between that time and the time you were presented with the PIIA, which is the basis of the claims in this case against you, were you provided information that you now understand Flow Sports contends is confidential or trade secret?
I was provided, I had access to things they claimed were trade secrets.
Before you signed the PIIA?
Before, yes.
When was the first time that you heard about this document that we've marked as Plaintiff's Exhibit 160, the PIIA?
The first time I heard about it, I don't know, it was, obviously it was 2014 and we had just, I say we, Flow had just bought a sports video company and they were planning on live streaming stuff. So I got this piece of paper, PIIA, and I assumed it had something to do with that. And that's the first time I heard about it.
Did you review it?
Yes, sir.
Were you willing to sign it at that time?
No.
Why not?
Because it sounded scary.
So what did you do?
Judge, I'm going to object to any evidence that's parole evidence here about talking about the contents of a contract that has a merger clause. You previously excluded this in the temporary injunction.
Don't think
Sorry.
there's any danger of that since he said he did not sign it. The next question was, what did you do?
Okay.
You can answer that question.
What did I do? I sort of labored on it. I have this document I'm thinking about signing. Should I sign it? Should I not sign it? What exactly does it mean? And then the office manager came around and said, hey, Willie, we need that you need that a thing signed from you. And I said, yeah, okay, I just forgot to sign it. And so it bought me a couple more days, and I'm thinking about signing it. And then the office manager came around again and said, hey, Will, you still didn't have this signed. We need this. And then at that point, I was like, listen, I'm not comfortable signing this. Can I talk to somebody? Tell me what this means?
Who did you talk to?
Well, I think the office manager asked or told well, at this point in time, there's like 15 people in the office, right? So whatever, the office manager tells somebody, the higher ups, hey, Willie is objecting to signing this agreement.
Question was, who, if anybody, did you speak to about it?
They sent Martin to discuss it with him.
Did you discuss it with Mr. Floriani?
Yes.
Okay. And what were your concerns and what did he tell you?
Objection, judge, this calls for parole evidence.
You may respond, Your Honor.
Sure.
Your Honor, we do have counterclaims that involve fraud, promissory estoppel. The contract, we've argued, is unambiguous the way we interpret it, or in the alternative, ambiguity has been pled. And to the extent they're trying to enforce it in a way different than was represented to them, there's estoppel, and it would be contrary to 1552, which would prohibit unreasonable waivers.
I'm sorry, merger clauses completely bar those extraneous causes of action. You can't, with a merger clause, you cannot introduce the parole evidence and try to get around the contract itself. The person who would be committing the fraud here is Martin Floriani, which doesn't make any sense. It's roundabout, and and that parole evidence should be excluded.
Document speaks for itself. So what he signed it. It speaks. I've said that phrase 100 times in the last 3 days. The document speaks for itself, and it will. So I'll sustain the objection to any evidence about what he thought or what he was told by Mr. Floriani. He signed it. It says what it says. That's the contract. Let's move on.
Understood. Your Honor, what was your understanding when you signed it as to what that meant? Your understanding, Mr. Saylor. What live sports video would mean?
Same objection, Your Honor. His understanding is also parole evidence.
No, what he understood he was signing is not. You can answer that question. What did you understand you were doing?
I was scared to sign it because
No.
Non-responsive. Can you answer my question, Mr. Saylor?
So I'm going to ask Mr. Soltero to re-ask his question so you're clear what he's asking you, but answer just that question if you would, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Saylor, when you signed the PIA, what was your understanding of what live sports video would mean?
my understanding was that by signing that agreement, I was agreeing that for 1 year, I was not allowed to, for 1 year after I was fired or quit Flow, whenever that date may come, it was my understanding that by signing that document, I was saying for 1 year after that date, I cannot live stream anything.
Okay. Now, at the time you signed this, did you receive any bonus of any kind?
No.
Did you receive any salary increase or raise?
Objection, Judge. Objection, Judge. This calls for, I mean, this is irrelevant. It wouldn't even be proper consideration to give these items at that time.
Overruled. You can answer that question. There's been lots of testimony about compensation and bonuses and so forth. So you can answer the question.
I did not receive.
Okay. Did you receive any stock or shares of stock or stock options at that time?
No.
Were you given any additional responsibilities at that time or a promotion?
No.
Were you given any training on what to put on spreadsheets or any other kind of training at that time?
No.
Okay. By the way, has Flow Sports ever paid you anything extra to make spreadsheets, as Mr. Machuca suggested?
No.
Okay. Through your time at Flow Sports, did your position in the company change?
Yes.
How so?
I went from, a contributor or a content producer to site head to site editor to managing editor, and then back down to content provider, content producer.
Roughly what time period did that transition from managing editor back to content creator, a demotion essentially? When did that happen approximately?
2017, 2018.
Okay. When did you move back to Pennsylvania?
May of 2018.
And you agreed to take less money,
Yes, sir.
but there was a bonus component to your compensation, right?
Yes, sir.
Objection, leading. I know he already answered, but it's a whole series of leading questions, so.
Sustained. So glad you recognize it when others do it, Ms. Burgess.
I will rephrase, Your Honor.
I couldn't resist that one.
Guilty as charged, Judge. I think we all do it.
All right,
Mr.
Mr. Sotero, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Saylor, can you please describe for the court and those watching what the compensation structure was at the time when you accepted your demotion as you've just testified?
I had a base salary, and then the bonus structure was either $2,500 or $3,000. I forget which, for every 100 subscribers that were attributed to me through Periscope per quarter.
Okay. Let's talk about, earlier you mentioned that your relationship with your direct supervisor, Mr. Piles, had been, I think you mentioned, a ticking time bomb. Do you remember saying that?
Yes, sir.
What, was there an incident involving, can you give us some examples of some of the incidents that you believe describe that ticking time bomb relationship?
Yeah, I mean,
First of all, what time period was this?
it began when he moved to Austin.
When was that?
It was when we were at our new headquarters, which is not the current headquarters. Then it had to be 15 or 16.
Okay.
Actually,
Was there,
it might have began before that. The first incident, I'll never forget, was at the World Cup. One of the years it was in LA, 14, 15. And I think that was before he moved.
I'm sorry, I don't know who the he is in your sentence.
Christian Piles.
and did that remain true over time, or did that change somehow over time?
And it got worse. It evolved into uglier.
We've heard testimony already about the Ohio State incident. Were there other incidents involving other wrestling programs in 2019 as well?
Yes.
Can you tell us about some of those?
We got in an argument over Oklahoma State. We got over arguments about Rutgers.
Was there an argument over any Michigan wrestling?
Michigan, I'm not sure.
Was there an incident involving Logan Storley?
Logan Storley's Minnesota, yes.
Minnesota. Okay. And then tell us about the Rutgers incident.
Well, the Rutgers incident was a little personal to Piles, I guess. I don't know. He was buddies with one of the wrestlers' fathers. And so I'm about to get on a plane to go to the World Championships, and somebody had tweeted, "Hey, Willie, what's Suriano going to do next year? Is he going to wrestle, or he's going to redshirt, or is he going to go to MMA?" To which I responded, "I am done giving up on the circus that is Nick Suriano's future because it always changes." And Christian called me screaming, you can't offend people like that. And Big Tens are at Rutgers this year. I said, I didn't offend anybody. I said, I promise you, Nick Soriano ain't mad. But anyway, we argued about that for 3 days.
And then in the Oklahoma State situation, was it a similar type disagreement and essentially reprimand from your superior?
Yeah, so that was on the radio. That was on a live. It was on Flow Radio Live, our talk show. And I don't even remember what the topic was, but the head coach of Oklahoma State, John Smith, he's like the GOAT, right? He's like one of the greatest in American history. And actually, I consider a friend. But one of his positions on something I thought was sort of ridiculous. And so on the radio show, I said, John Smith is crazy on this one. And after the show, Piles ripped into me and said, you can't say that about John Smith and this and this and that. And I said, number one, John Smith ain't listening to our show right now anyway. And number two, he's not going to be mad. John Smith's a big boy. And if he has an issue with it, I'll talk to him. The point of it is there's been things like that for years.
And did you have concerns from time to time about how Mr. Piles treated coworkers?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Wow, he was always confrontational up to the point I left. He was always physically getting in front of, physically confronting people. He did so with me as I said, the first time in LA at the World Cup. They wanted to kick him out, and he blamed me for the incident. I have no idea how, but he blamed me for the incident. I think he was more embarrassed than anything. One time on a radio show, one time we're doing a live show, a live video show, and he physically attacks Dan Lobdell live on the air, and all of us else in the room, everybody else in the room was like, this is highly unprofessional. And there were things like that happen often.
We've heard about your getting a job offer from UNC. I'd like to show Defendant's Exhibit 92. I don't know if this has been admitted, but if not, I would move for its admission. First, I guess if we could, Mr. Wisrod, if you could please call it Defendant's Exhibit 92.
I'm not sure what this is.
Not yet been admitted.
No objection.
Ms. Klingseisen,
No objection.
92 is admitted.
Mr. Saylor, can you tell us what Defendant's 92 is?
That is a offer letter from the head coach of North Carolina.
Okay. And then
That's not an offer letter. That is a declaration. Flo asked me for it. I don't know why.
how did it come to be that Flow Sports asked you to get the document which has now been admitted as Defendant's 92?
They told me that they were having personnel issues because of my departure. They told me that, so I said I'm leaving, I'm going to North Carolina. They said, okay, we have to reassign some people. They took the content marketer from one place at Flow, and they were going to use them it was David Bray. David Bray was doing content marketing for something, and they were going to use him now as the content marketer for wrestling based upon a restructuring of me leaving. The other department that he was leaving threw a fit, and I guess said, I was told by Piles that they said, that's not true. Willie's not leaving. You're just stealing him from our department. And Ray asked, Willie, can you provide proof so that we can show these other people that we are not stealing David Bray? He is needed. So I said, Coleman, can you provide some documentation? Flo wants it. And so this is what I sent Flo.
Okay, let me show you, sir, Defendant's Exhibit 114 and ask you if you could identify that for us.
That's congratulations from Coach Scott.
Okay. And I would offer 114 into evidence.
No objection.
No objection.
Okay. And the date on this email with the University of North Carolina program was on October 21, 2019.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me pull up Defendant's Exhibit 113.
Let me just clarify for the benefit of myself and the court reporter, if I'm remembering correctly, all of the defendant's exhibits are joint exhibits by both defendants. And so by offering them together, I assume that neither of you have objections to any of the ones on the defendant's exhibit list, correct?
Correct.
All right.
Correct,
Thank you.
Your Honor. And Defendant's Exhibit 113, if you could go to the next page, Mr. Wisrod.
It's
Was
not
this-
yet, it's not yet been admitted. Did you want to offer 113? And if so, Ms. Burgess, any objection to that one?
I did, Your Honor, want to admit it.
No objection.
113 is admitted.
And Mr. Saylor, was this the resume that you sent in connection with your looking into and accepting the job briefly in connection with UNC?
Yes.
If we could turn to Defendant's 112, please. Can you identify Defendant's 112? Okay. What's the subject line on that?
Moving to Carolina.
And what is the date, and do you recognize what that is?
That's 10/23, October 23. And it's a letter that
What year?
it's October 23rd, 2019. So a couple weeks before I quit.
Any objection to 112?
Judge.
It's admitted.
And can you tell the court what exhibit Defendant's 112 is, Mr. Saylor? Don't read it, just what generally were you communicating in this email?
Can I
Have it blown up?
can I summarize what it says? Is that the question?
What were you intending to do in sending this email is the question.
I went back on my decision to take the job at North Carolina.
And after that, you stayed at Flow Sports until the incident with Mr. Piles, your resignation that we've gone over before, right?
Objection.
It is leading. It is leading. I'll withdraw the question. Let me rephrase it. After notifying the University of North Carolina about your change in decision, what happened next? In terms of your employment?
Nothing.
Did you remain employed at Flow Sports or not?
Yes, I did.
Okay. We have,
Can we take this down?
I'm sorry? Yeah. Now, you try not to lead them, Your Honor. What in connection with your separation, you've already testified about it quite a bit. I'd like to ask some specific questions. Why did you access Periscope after the conversation you had with Mr. Piles that led to your quitting and them shutting off your access?
Because I wanted to check on the status of my bonus.
Of your what?
Bonus.
Okay. Was there any other reason?
No, sir.
Have you ever, since you left Flow Sports, used any of the Periscope information in any way other than that one time?
No, and
I'm going to object to any further answer that might come after the and is non-responsive.
And I would join that objection. Why couldn't you, sir, have done as I think Mr. Machuca or Mr. Wendler testified last week, just trusted Flow Sports as to the amount of the bonus that they owed you?
I could make a joke there, but I won't.
No jokes.
And because me and Piles had this standard operating procedure on how we came up with the number. I mean, it was fair and equitable. I mean, he would look at the data on Periscope and say, I have you down as having 300 subscribers this quarter. And I would go to him and I would say, I have 301. And he would say, okay, what's the discrepancy? And I would say this. And he would say, okay, or not really. And we would do it together. That's the way we always did it. And yeah.
So did you have any intent to use any Periscope data for any reason other than checking your bonus?
No, that's where the and came in before. Because I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it, but there's a very logical explanation for why it's ridiculous that they say I did access anything.
No. Let me ask you a different question. Have you used anything you learned from Periscope in the time you had access to it between 2017 and 2019 to write your articles, do rankings, or for any purpose whatsoever since November 3rd, 2019?
No.
Objection leaning. Objection leaning.
They
I'm sorry, Your Honor, did you sustain that?
did.
Okay. Have you used anything that you learned from Periscope since the time you left?
No.
Okay. Have you used any material or information from Stripe since you left?
No.
Have you used any material from Flow Sports Google Analytics since you left?
No.
Have you used anything about long lifetime value or variables of that type for any purpose since you left November 3rd?
No.
Did you communicate with Mr. Piles around the time that the private investigator came to your house?
Yes.
Did he tell you that Flow Sports was sending a private investigator to your mom's house?
No.
Did y'all have a text exchange about it?
Yes.
I'd like to pull up defendants 103. Mr. Wesrod, if we could see defendants 103. Okay. Do you recognize this as a series? Do you recognize 103?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What is it?
That's me telling him.
No. Don't say anything about the document. Just do you recognize what it is?
Yeah, don't tell us about what it says, just if you recognize it.
Yes, I recognize it. It's text messages.
With whom?
Christian.
Okay. I move for to offer 103 into evidence.
No objection, but it is a subpart of 190 F198, just for the record.
103 is admitted.
Okay. If Mr. Wizrod, if you could pull up the second half of the document, please. There you go. Perfect. Is this the exchange that you had with Mr. Piles at the time you got the private investigator came to your house?
Yes.
Okay. Prior to that, and actually if we could go, sorry, Mr. Wizrod, the first half of that, but excluding the image. Thank you. No, that's not it. The other is, you see in the left-hand corner of that where Mr. Piles writes to you about what is Miller's ranked?
Mm-hmm.
What did you interpret that to mean?
I'm going to object to calls for speculation. Mr.
Oh,
Piles himself is going to testify.
No, it calls for him to tell us what he understood it to mean, not what was actually meant. Two different things. You can tell us what you understood it to mean.
It's a joke. It's a running joke between me and Piles. The image above, although it kind of looks like Piles, is not Piles. That picture is a picture of a kid.
So it's a joke. It's a joke. But then,
Yes, it's a guy on Saturday Night Live.
and then the next thing was the conversation about the investigator. Okay, let's take that one off. Mr. Saylor, can you tell us how this lawsuit has affected you personally?
I'm going to object to relevance. This is a breach of contract and trade secret case, and the feelings about it are really irrelevant and parole evidence.
Your Honor, I'm not asking about feelings. I'm asking how it's affected him.
The objection is overruled. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, if I'm supposed to discuss non-feelings, it's certainly affected my relationships in the community, because I'm limited to certain things. I don't have the opportunity to work with some people that I really enjoy working with. I don't have the opportunity to do certain things with them. There's also been a lot of lies spread. You know, I got a call from a prominent coach the other day. Hey, the flow guys.
I'm going to object to
Don't tell us
hearsay.
what the coach said. Don't tell us what the coach said. How else has it affected you, if at all?
I mean, professionally, it's hurt my pocketbook. It's hurting my brand, which is probably more important than what money you make, both tangibly and intangibly. It's hurt my reputation. It feels really unfair.
Did Mr. Piles ever tell you what was motivating Flow Sports in this case?
Yes.
I'm going
What
to
did he
object
say?
to. I'm going to
Your Honor.
object to the motivation in enforcing a party's rights under a contract.
Your Honor, there's a trade secret allegation, and because of the nature of the lawsuit and our counterclaims, it's a party opponent.
That the trade secret allegation, the bad faith in a trade secret allegation is a Rule 13 violation that requires a separate and independent hearing. And so if you were to make a determination that the trade secret claim was brought in bad faith, then you would have a separate hearing on that. Moreover, Mr. Piles, I know the conversation he's going to talk about, Mr. Piles had a Rule 408 settlement communication with Mr. Saylor about ways to resolve the case, and Mr. Saylor wants to quote from that.
It's not
Well,
a 408.
I don't know whether it is related to settlement or not. Obviously, if it is, their settlement discussions are not the subject of testimony before the court. So I don't want to hear about any settlement negotiations. I don't think there's any dispute that Mr. Piles is an agent of the plaintiff, is there?
No, but motive of the
So-
plaintiff is
Hang on. It seems disingenuous a little to suggest that it was in the nature of a settlement discussion, which theoretically Mr. Piles had authority to make, but then say he's not an agent. So I just want
No, I
to
never said that.
I know.
Right.
I understand. That's why I'm trying to clear it up. That's my point in asking the question. Let's not jump to conclusions, everybody. Let me finish my sentences, and then I'll try to articulate why I'm asking. I'm just simply saying that would be disingenuous, and therefore I'm trying to get clarity about everybody's position. So to put a fine point on that, can we all agree that Mr. Piles is an agent of the plaintiff?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, then the objection is overruled. You may answer the question about what he told you.
He told me on multiple occasions, and starting,
Just what he said, Mr. Saylor. What did he say?
that they were not going to sue me, that the point was not to sue me, that the point was to go after Martin Floriani and to get information on Martin Floriani.
Okay. there has been allegations in this case that you took down content and then posted it from Flow Sports and then posted it on your Mad Scout channels on Rockfin. I'd like to ask you about that.
It's demonstrably not true.
Okay. Can you explain for the court what you observed and why you believe it's demonstrably not true?
Because I think what they alleged were rankings. And the first rankings that I put up on Mat Scouts had results and notes of results that occurred from competitions that occurred after I quit. So how, pray tell, could I take rankings that had results that were after I left?
Okay.
In other words, I quit on a Saturday night. There were results that week that the rankings included after that date.
And have you, since the injunction, have you posted any new videos on your website?
No,
Since the injunction, have you done any podcasts?
no.
Since the injunction, have you done any blogs?
What was that word?
Blogs or vlogs? Video blogs.
There's a big distinction.
Right.
Blogs with a B is print. Vlogs with a V is video. I have not done any vlogs, no.
Okay. Ms. Burgess brought up the issue we've heard about previously, but would like to just have you be clear for the record in the trial. Mr. Wisrot, if you could pull up F420, please. Do you remember Ms. Burgess asking you questions about F420?
Yes, sir.
For the record, can you tell us what happened in connection with F420?
A gentleman in Oklahoma said that he was looking to put on an event, but he had no standing in the community. Would I mind putting out a tweet to make people aware of it?
And were you getting paid for any of this?
No, sir.
Did the event even happen? To your knowledge?
No, it did not.
Okay. If you could take that down, please, Mr. Wisrot. You've seen that Flow Sports contended that you had 5,000 subscribers in December of 2019. Have you not seen that?
Yes, sir.
Is that true?
I did
Let
not.
me rephrase. Was that true in December of 2019?
Well, it wasn't true then. It's not true now. It was never true.
Have you ever shared your login credentials or passwords for your personal Gmail with anyone at Flow Sports?
No.
Did you ever authorize Flow Sports to access your personal Gmail?
No.
When you returned your laptop to the private investigator, did you leave any browser window on your Gmail open or not?
No.
Judge, I object to relevance. This is the electronically stored information claim that has been dismissed on summary judgment.
Your Honor, it's relevant to equitable issues and their motivations.
I don't understand how it's related to, are you suggesting they had some sort of unclean hands of some kind or what?
Exactly, Your Honor. I should have used.
Is that pled? Is unclean hands pled? Does that appear? Do those words appear in any of your pleadings?
I'll double check.
Regardless, us using our own computer has already been ruled to not be violative, and it's not.
Thank you, Ms. Burgess, but there's no question to you at the moment, and I'm just waiting for Mr. Soltero to answer the question I asked him.
Yes, paragraph 6 of our second amended answer.
All right. Is there is there any dispute about whether or not he gave permission for anyone else to use his passwords? Is that even a dispute?
No one
Oh.
used his passwords.
I
No-
didn't
no
say
one
they
used
did.
it.
I never said that they did. My question doesn't say that. My question said simply, is there any dispute that he did not give his passwords to anybody at Flow or anywhere else to access his personal information? Is that in dispute? Yes or no?
No, it's not. It's not in dispute and it
Okay,
didn't
then
happen.
let's move on.
In 2020, were there events completely unrelated to you that impacted Flow to your knowledge?
I'm going to object to cause for speculation. He wasn't able to
Okay.
testify about.
Burgess, just state the objection in the grounds. If I need further argument, I will invite it. I have sustained the objection. Mr. Sotero?
Yes, Your Honor. Have you solicited any Flow Sports employees to leave and go anywhere?
No,
Have you specifically targeted any Flow Sports customer or subscriber to leave and go anywhere?
no,
Objection leading.
Your Honor,
Sustained.
Your Honor, I'll pass the witness.
I'm guessing you have a few more questions. Do you think that they will last more than 15 minutes?
I do, and I'll be much more organized if I have some time. It's not going to be more than probably 30 minutes, but it's going to if I'm organized.
Ms. Burgess,